Hi everyone, welcome to our next sports psychology screencast, and today we're going to be looking at social facilitation and inhibition. So the section of the specification we're focusing on the concept of social facilitation and what that is, thinking about the role and effects of others in sporting performance, and then the causes and effects of evaluation appreciation, which is a model by Zajonc and Cottrell, and then finally finishing off a little bit later on with strategies to combat social inhibition. So our key question is, how does a crowd affect sporting performance? So we need to think about what social facilitation is to start with. So it's how people other than the performer can influence his or her attitudes or behaviours. Okay, so the other people involved in the situation, how they're going to affect your performance, or obviously the performance of others within your team. Okay, so it could be positive. So it could be maybe something like a crowd having a positive effect on a performer, boosting their performance, or it could be negative. So maybe an away team having a negative effect on a performer, and we're going to look at the different differences between them as we're going forward. So facilitation as a concept is improved performance by highly skilled or an extrovert performer. So we can kind of link it to our drive theory from arousal. And gross or simple skills tend to be improved by the audience the audience effects. So basically, we're saying here that facilitation is that kind of improved performance, that kind of that positive effect of the crowd or other performers. And inhibition, or social inhibition, is over-aroused novices whose skills are not well learned and they suffer and decline performance. We can link it to our inverted U. Okay, and fine and complex skills become inhibited. So that's our facilitation and inhibition, inhibited, kind of the clues in the names of what they are there. But these people that influence our performers are people that we call co-actors. Okay, so they're passive forms of audience involved in the same activity at the same time as a performer, and that could be an official, it could be other teammates. It could be ball boys or ball girls, okay, and they are passive audience, they're co-actors. Okay, so we're thinking about how our crowd is affecting sporting performance a little bit more. So factors that are affecting it are the proximity of an audience, okay? So the proximity of the audience, if they're sat right next to the pitch, okay, would be different to if here they're sat a little bit further away, okay? So that proximity, they're further away, they're kind of less intimidating, but it could have less of a positive effect as well. So the proximity will have an effect. The size of the audience as well, okay, so if there's very few people watching a particular event, they will have limited impact on that. But again, that could be limited positive impact or limited negative impact. The next one is the intentions of the audience, okay? So if the negative behavior may suppress or increase arousal, okay? It depends what the intentions of the audience are there. So if you think about some particular football fans are notorious for an away team just for kind of riling people up, and if that's their intention, obviously that's going to have an effect on performance as well. Okay, and the other one is personality. So linking back to our personality theory, so our extroverts will perform better when aroused, and our introverts can be over-aroused. Okay, so again, thinking about the impact of the crowd, our extroverts will be able to handle that better due to their arousal levels. And then we've got skill level or difficulty. So thinking about how well learned a skill is, okay, and then how the arousal levels in the crowd will impact that skill level. Okay, so maybe attempting a bicycle kick in front of a full Wembley Stadium might not be, if it's not particularly well learned, it might not go particularly well. And then the type of task. So thinking about linking to your skill acquisition, fine skills, gross skills. So our fine skills need lower levels of arousal, and our gross skills improve by increased arousal levels. So we can link that back to kind of Hall's drive theory of your kind of gross skills and things like that, and so on and so forth. So moving on to Zajonc and Cottrell's model. So Zajonc and Cottrell have said that the mere presence of others creates arousal, which affects performance. Okay, but it's to do with how well learned the skills are. So if a skill is poorly learnt, the incorrect response is dominant, and this is caused by arousal. So if you think about if you've been learning something, it's not a particularly well learned skill, you're highly aroused, you're not going to be able to execute that skill very well. And then if a skill is well learnt, then arousal causes a correct response because the correct response is dominant. Okay. So those things that you've been doing that are innate to you, almost that you've learned a lot throughout your life. Okay. Maybe it's a particular routine in gymnastics or something like that. It's so well rehearsed, it's well learnt, then actually your arousal levels will cause that to be your dominant response because it's so well learnt. Okay, so evaluation appreciation is suggesting that the audience is perceived as evaluating, which causes anxiety, which turns to arousal. Okay, so they're increasing that psychological arousal. So we go into dominant performance mode, which will reduce performance while learning, but improve performance when expert. So just kind of linking to kind of what we've already said. It's just about how well learned those skills are as to what's the dominant response when those arousal levels are high. So distraction effects. So if we're thinking about the crowd, or if we're thinking about co-actors and distraction. So Barron's distraction conflict theory says that distraction is an aspect of concentration, and attentional focus is important for effective sports person. And if this is disrupted, he or she is distracted from another task. So if there's something there that's distracting, it might be a particular person in a crowd or something like that. That's gonna impact performance and probably reduce performance. Okay, I think you can link it to kind of some of the other theories that we've already talked about. Okay, so a sports person therefore needs to practice in distracting circumstances, or practice switching attentional focus when faced with potential distracting circumstances. Okay, so maybe practicing with some level of crowd and things like that, so that when it comes to performing in front of them, they're able to divert their attention to their performance, so that they can ultimately perform to the best of their ability. Okay, home field advantage is something that we kind of know is a preference of sports people. So home or away teams affect performance concerns. The facts that more teams win at home than away. Okay, so we kind of know that statistically people win more at home. So in the World Cup 1966, just an example, Wembley had 97,000 spectators. England obviously won the World Cup. The home players are more comfortable. It limits their anxiety, and we can think about it in terms of that positive facilitation, that social facilitation of the crowd. Okay, and then strategies for coping with social inhibition, so that negative impact of co-actors, the crowd, of other people. So using stress management, okay, so we can kind of link to things we've already talked about. Mental rehearsal, so rehearsing a free throw, something like that. Selective attention, so away from the evaluators, away from the audience, kind of refocusing the attention on the skill or the task in hand, lowering the importance of the situation. Okay, so trying to, maybe not think about the fact that it's a World Cup final or something like that, just another game, and then training with an audience present as well. Okay, obviously we know we're not going to get, Wembley Stadium crowd stand at training, but having an audience there at training would obviously kind of normalize the effects of those evaluators, that audience presence. Okay, so we've looked at how the crowd affects sporting performance. If you need to go back and make any additional notes, feel free to do so. Otherwise, we'll be recapping it during the lesson.